All right, today we've got our good friends JJ from Idle Threat and Joe from Lightworker. You guys have been on the podcast so many times, you need no new introduction, but we're just excited to chat with you guys. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be ranking all 9 Norma Jean albums, which it's kind of hard to believe that they have 9 albums now at this point. Quite a bit in output, especially for like a metalcore band. I think, obviously metalcore kind of probably got its, origins probably in the late 90s. And so there aren't too many bands that are even over like 30 years old, but they've got to be probably have one of the greatest outputs now at this point in the metalcore scene. But we're going to rank each album from, so each one of us will do a ranking of our favorite Norma Jean album all the way down to our least favorite Norma Jean album. And then what we're going to do is we're going to compile all of our rankings and then come up with a definitive Black Sheep Norma Jean ranking list.
Norma ranking. I like that.
Norma ranking.
So I'm looking forward to it. I just mentioned right before we started recording that, because they have so many albums out now, and because each one of us, Norma Jean's probably, at least for each one of us, a top 5 favorite band of all time, that we love them enough, and they have enough albums out where it feels like we could do something like this, So we definitely have probably a definitive least favorite Norma Jean album, and we certainly have a favorite Norma Jean album. So I'm super stoked about this. How about you guys?
Dude, I'm pumped. I guess what I will say, though, to begin with, is that I don't think there is a single bad Norma Jean album.
Bingo.
Like,
That's
to
fair.
me,
That's fair.
to me, it's like, hey, it's like pizza or like sex. It's like, I mean, it's
Which
it's still pretty good.
JJ and I would not know about that at all, right?
Yeah,
As unmarried
I don't
men,
eat
right?
pizza, and I definitely am still a virgin.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. So
With
like
that hat, yeah.
hell yeah, dude. There you go. But yeah, no, I mean it's one of those things where it's just like a Norma Jean record is always going to be a solid, like 4 out of 5 at minimum. So at least to me. So I mean, I don't want anybody coming at me saying like, "Yo, what's up?" Because I know I have some takes here. But yeah, but I'm pumped.
Yeah, agreed fully. And also the fact that there's been, 20 members of Norma Jean, and they somehow maintain just a solid cohesiveness with just enough difference along the way. That's the most impressive part to me.
Yeah, the one thing that I think is maybe the thing I like the most about Norma Jean is the fact that they have that consistent sound throughout all of their albums. Even despite the fact that they don't have any original members at this point. I mean, I think it's just a really cool part of who they are as a band. Obviously at this point now, Corey has been a part of the band longer than anyone. And, I would say probably the sort of Norma Jean sound that we associate with Norma Jean is probably due to Corey. But still, the fact that like you've got a band that doesn't have any original members, having some sort of consistent theme. I mean, if you listen to their most recent album and you listen to Bless the Martyr, there's still going to be these common kind of core tones that you hear that are just Norma Jean tones that sound nothing else but like Norma Jean tones. There's just something about it. I don't know, that they just have a Norma Jean sound through and through. It's one of the coolest things about the band, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think, even, and every album sounds completely different. Even so, like, that's what's kind of weird. It's just like, it's not linear, but in terms of like sound, but you can always tell where it's coming from. And I think it's been very respectful of what like the original lineup actually laid down with Bless the Martyr, while still expanding and their sound and their identity. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about them today with a friend, actually, and I, just to wrap it up nice and neat and put a bow on top of it, it's like they go across the spectrum of chaos very well, and we can get more into that later, but their entire discography just shows you exactly what chaotic music is. But then each of those albums are different, so it's just all over that spectrum. covering every space. So really cool stuff.
Just a total complete band through and through.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, we'll dive into it, but before we dive into ranking these albums, important news to be made on the BlackSheep Podcast. You heard it here. Breaking news. Idle Threat is releasing a new album, which I don't think is breaking news. I think that has been at least known that you all are going to be releasing new music at some point this year. However, what is different is Cullen, Joe, and I have heard the album, and we got to say, it's the best Idle Threat has ever been. Got to be honest.
Yeah, hands down.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
I don't know if we can say it. We certainly can't leak more than that, but I just want you all to know it's the best Idle Threat probably will ever be. I don't know how you guys are going to tell. You've peaked, JJ. You've peaked.
Man, I peaked in high school. I don't know what y'all talking about.
It's I think it's similar to Norma Jean. I think it also still retains a lot of that Idle Threat sound that we heard on the earlier stuff, but while still moving forward, and the guest vocal spots are brilliant. They sound seamless, and this is all I'll say. That last track definitely made me reflect a lot, and maybe made me well up a little bit or not. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's great. JJ's probably not going to say anything else. I don't think he was supposed to share it with us, but he did because he's a bro. He's a bro. Like,
hey,
he even wears his cap backwards like a bro.
I'll share more about it in my own episode or something like that. But we're
he thinks he's getting another one, guys.
Oh,
what the heck?
I am the Black Sheep Podcast. But nah, I'm really excited to finally put this out. Everything's kind of hitting the ground now, and we're running with it. So we're gonna have this out by the end of the year. I don't want to make promises or anything like that because it's out of my control. But we're really pushing for it. Yeah, and I'm just really excited to get it out to whoever's gonna listen to it. So yeah.
Can't wait.
But anyway, Norma Jean.
Speaking of real bands, let's rank Norma Jean albums. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to start with the very first Norma Jean album, and we're going to just slowly work our way through each one to the most recent. So it all starts out with Bless the Martyr, Kiss the Child, 2002. Yeah, Cullen, I don't know if we have a particular order that we want to do.
We should probably put a little caveat on this, that because there are a lot of super fans of Norma Jean out there, and so we are not going to include Ludacris, the band name before Norma Jean, even though it is still technically Norma Jean.
Luda.
We're not going to include Throwing Myself, which is also a great album in its own right, but these are strictly Norma Jean monikered names, or bands, or albums. Jeez. Yeah, albums. So yeah, Bless the Martyr, Kiss the Child. Who wants to go first?
Who wants to go first? Where do you have it ranked?
I don't want to just jump in there and, be that guy, but I'm gonna
be that guy.
This is such an outlier because, like, on one hand, it's like this is one of the most like iconic records that we could talk about, and it, it deserves its own like glory, but also like the way that I view Norma Jean is like, this is Corey Brandon's band. Like I'll 100% say that. Like when I think Josh Scoggin, I think The Chariot, I think 68. When I think Norma Jean, I think Corey. And
I think Esocaris. I don't know what you're talking about.
But I just, I love this record for what it is. I had a really hard time placing it in my own ranking. So it's literally smack dab in the middle. It's just such an outlier, which like it's great for what it is, but like, does it stand the test of time? I do think so. But like, when I'm comparing it to the Corey records, do I like it more or less? So I had a really hard time with this one. I wrestled with it for a while, but I put it at 5 out of 9. for their records. But before we really get into it, like, I mean, there's so many different like pieces of this record that we can talk about. But Josh doing the vocals on it alone, it's gonna bump it up, the ranking. But this album absolutely set a tone for what this band would end up being. So
Yeah.
I don't even know where to begin, really. Like it's just there's so much you can say about the guitar work, the drums, the vocals, their live show during that time, and the fact that it's over 20 years old now is pretty crazy. But I don't know, there's just a lot to sit with this record, and just because it's such an outlier, it's just such a powerful entity. I where do you put it? So, like, I'm curious to see what you guys think, too.
Well, I think along those lines, at least for me, is... So let me just preface it by saying I've got it at number 2, Cullen. So
Okay.
I've got it at number 2 for me. So it's obviously in the top third even. What drives me nuts, though, about Bless the Martyr is there are Norma Jean's fans out there where... when they think of Norma Jean, they only think of that album, and they really haven't listened to anything since. Or if they have, they almost think of it, they almost like listen to the other albums or the other Norma Jean songs through the lens of, well, this just doesn't stack up to Josh Goggin, Norma Jean. And like, I just think that totally does a disservice to Norma Jean.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that is the part of this album that sort of drives me nuts. And it's not actually the album itself. It's just some of the Norma Jean fans. Now, with that said, whenever there is a Bless the Martyr song that they play live, I think part of my excitement about that is seeing how everybody freaks out, probably more than any other song on any other album. There's just something about that album that just carries some weight that is really cool for the band, and especially the fact that it's the band's first album, kind of. And I don't know, there's just something really cool about that. So I have it number 2, partly because I think it holds up. I mean, it's almost 23 years old now, and just sound-wise, even though it was recorded completely live or whatever, it just holds up really well, especially when you think of its contemporaries, even outside of the Christian music world.
Yeah.
Like, you think of, like, Converge releasing Jane Doe the year
Right,
before.
yeah.
Botch releasing some albums around that time. Like, you think of some of those contemporaries, they sound kind of right in that mix, and it's just as iconic. You have extremely iconic riffs. I mean, especially you've got like just an iconic song like Memphis, right? But just the whole album, you've got a 16-minute long song and you have a 1-minute long song. I mean, it's like everything you would ever want in a Norma Jean album. You have an album closer that just crescendos beautifully. I don't know, just everything about it is just lovely. And it's hard to believe that a bunch of like 18, 19, 20-year-olds made this album.
Wild.
But they did, and it's pretty cool. So anyway, I've got it at number 2. It's an album that I listen to probably at least once a month. I just think it's incredible. And again, like I said, maybe I think it's within the context of it does drive me nuts that there are a lot of Norma Jean fans that only see this album as like the pure Norma Jean album. And I just think that does a disservice to the band.
Yeah. Joe?
I would say that for me, I kind of don't look at it like Norma Jean, for the reasons that Justin said. It's like, I mean, those are Josh's lyrics, those are his vocals, and I definitely recognize it as like a Norma Jean record, but I kind of see it as proto Chariot also. And it exists in this weird like dimension where it's Norma Jean Chariot-ish, like, just this weird like conglomeration. So, and I would say that as I was listening to it today, I noticed that there's actually a little bit of nu metal influence that still is leaking over from the Chris days.
For
and
sure.
as you guys know about me, I'm not really a big nu metal guy. So, like, I definitely, objectively, I do think it stands the test of time. I love what they were doing also. Even back then, with having a metal band or metalcore band or whatever, or heavy band record like live and stuff was just unheard of. It's like everybody was just sitting next to the console and just even back then. But this is number 9 for me, to be honest.
Wow.
That surprises me.
Wow.
Yeah, because like I said, it's hard for me to correlate it with what has become Corey's band. You know, I would also say that I'm definitely a big Chariot fan. But there's something about Corey's lyrics, his approach, and especially as he grew as a musician, a vocalist, and a frontman, like seeing that evolution I don't know, it really strikes a chord with me. And as we get into the later part of the discography, I think you'll see how passionate I get about this band, because it's just something that just really stirs something in me. But I definitely do own, this album on vinyl. I have 2 copies of it.
Same.
And like I Face is like a fucking classic.
It's my favorite song on that record.
Yeah, and so I mean, like I said, the caveat for me at the beginning was like, some of these records might be ranked lower, but that doesn't mean that I don't love them. But That's where it is for me.
Interesting. I rank this 3rd on my list, but for me, this record is so substantial in where it rests in my personal music listening journey. This was the album that like moved the needle for me. Like this was I got it in 2003, and it opened the door for what I realized music could be. I did not know music existed that was that heavy. I did not know music existed that was that unpredictable, but also still maintaining so many melodic elements that didn't seem like anything else I had heard. And even to this day, I would argue that dissonance, they have like if there's one thing I can say about Norma Jean throughout their entire catalog, it's that they have a dissonance in all of their songs that produces melody. Usually dissonance and melody, I feel like they don't really coexist very well, but Norma Jean does it. And they've been doing it since Bless the Martyr. And that's absolutely astounding to me. On top of that, like just visually, the first music videos that I really remember watching over and over and over again were from this record. And it really just blew my mind. It expanded my universe. I went from listening to like Aaron Carter to fucking Norma Jean. Like, how does that work? How does that key get unlocked? Like, how does that key unlock that door? But it did. So they're my gateway drug. This is the gateway album for like my entire listening experience, and that's why it's high for me. But 3rd is not 1st. So that puts our average score at a 4.75. So I assume we round that up to 5.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
We'll see how that plays out at the end.
Yeah.
That works for us. All right. Next album came out in 2005. Oh God, The Aftermath. Another incredible album.
Yes.
Yeah. Look at that. JJ, when did you get that?
I've had it.
What? Cullen and I have that on. Oh, I have it on my back.
Oh,
Cullen,
really?
you have that on your
Oh my
leg, I
God.
think.
Yeah, I have it on my leg.
Joe, you're next.
Dude, I have no tattoos.
Really?
I mean,
Oh, you're so straight edge.
but it's not even that, dude. It's just that I'm afraid that Trump's gonna come after me and deport my ass if I have any kind of fucking tattoo, bro. Like, come on, can't wear skulls.
Well, they're gonna Photoshop it on you anyway. Don't worry.
Yeah, like this.
I mean, if they're gonna Photoshop tattoos on you to deport you, they might as well Photoshop the Hook Man, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, it would probably save you. It would probably save you.
Yeah.
It'd be like, oh, that's Norma Jean. You're good. You're good.
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
definitely.
exactly.
You're
They're
definitely
from
not.
Arkansas.
Yeah.
Southern metalcore, baby. Let's go. Yeah.
The South will
Doesn't get
rise
more
again.
American than that.
Yeah.
They should give you like a red carpet right to the White House. Like, you are as American gets.
Dude, fucking have like a luxurious McDonald's meal with Trump. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
But
There you go.
But anyway,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh God. Let's see here. I'll go first if you guys are cool.
Do
with
it
that.
to it, man.
Do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I could not get Bayonet work out of my head
Yes.
for like a solid 3 months, and it's so cool. And like, I really like that kind of gruff, tough guy singing that like Corey does on some of the tracks on there, and and while there was like some dissonant sounds that you could hear on and that chaos that you could hear on Bless the Martyr, I feel like it got a little. In some ways, it became a little bit more straightforward, but in some ways, some of the riffs got like even crazier, like Carrick Tarantula.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, like it's just like that, dude. I fucking love that. And it's just like it literally just reminds me of like a tarantula. It's just so fun, and I just love it. And I think also the way that I guess for me, like thinking back on it now and having been in a band now for a while, you can definitely see the seeds of him as a lyricist beginning to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you read the lyrics that he had back then compared to like on Death Rattle, like it is night and day. And you see the evolution of this vocalist, this human being, and also, let's go there, spiritually, how different the trajectory is also. And with that being said, I mean, we got to mention the B side, which is Sean Liu.
Yeah.
Which definitely, and Norma Jean definitely has their share of B sides that are sick. I'm not sure why some of those were omitted, but like that's probably my favorite B side of theirs. And coincidentally, I think of early Norma Jean, I would say that's definitely one of the more spiritual ones. And it's so cool, and the fact that they named it after like a band friend, who had passed, I think is an awesome testament. And it's just so for me, I would say it ranks like, again, it's hard. This is really hard, but I would say it ranks at number 6 for me, because I feel like the best is still yet to come.
I'm going to take that and run with it. This is my favorite Norma Jean record, so it's number 1.
Dang.
Yeah. We already kind of mentioned I have an Oh God tattoo, actually. And even though this is literally the first Norma Jean record in my mind, I think it really set the tone for how this band, kind of really created something that is a masterpiece, which, that's their whole body of work. But Oh God was just, chaotic, but also melodic. And then I think, Corey stepping into the role that he has, like, with his lyricism and vocals and, with the guitar riffs and I don't know, like I could gush forever, but like the drums, like especially it's just how I want to play, like, if I could pick a band to be in a specific record, like in an era, it would be Norma Jean and Oh God. Like, and I don't know, like it's just like the beginning of Lie Arsenic is one of my favorite like opening like sections to a track, because it's just so crazy. And since I'm a big horror fan, it's like this is what I feel like serial killers like here when they're like killing someone, like that. The beginning of the track is like what is going through someone's mind when they murder someone. But in the same vein too, like the opening track is called Murderotica, which is coincidentally my favorite genre of movie. But I don't know, like this band's like really did something special with Oh God, and you know I've seen reunion shows and stuff that they played with this record, and you know I listen to it all the time. Like it's in my top 15 records of all time. You know, every time they play anything from it live, like it's just so fun. You know, when Idle Threat toured with them for a little bit a couple years ago, they were playing like the breakdown from Dylan Machine, and like I don't know, every once in a while they'll just be like, you know, here's a song from Oh God, and like play it. It's always so fun for me, but I don't know. I'll pass the torch. Like it's my favorite Norma Jean record by far. It's sitting pretty at number 1.
Well, I'll jump in right after you. It's also number 1 for me, and I've blown out at least 2 of my vehicle's speakers to this album, which is the best way to do it, in my opinion, because it's such a big sound, even though it's not the best recording in the world. It feels like it feels like it fills every single like ounce of airspace possible. I think that this is the absolute masterclass of heavy music drumming by Daniel Davison. It is the record that put him number 1 as my favorite drummer ever. I think especially the snare sound. What the hell is that? I don't know what he's playing there, but that snare sound absolutely rattles me to the bone every single time I hear it. And it's like crack cocaine. It gets me so excited every time I hear it. Especially,
you know what crack cocaine is like? Or what?
it's what I would imagine it to feel like. On top of that, you brought up, JJ, the breakdown from Dilemma Machine. That's probably my most replayed part of a song ever.
Good.
I listen to it all the time. And when we're seeing them live and they play Dilemma Machine live, I always feel so proud because I can always air drum perfectly to it, and no one else in the crowd does because it's like a weird like time signature.
The craziest thing about that is like at least the last couple times that I've seen them where they did do that, Corey just it's always at the end of a song, going into that part, and he just goes like, "Oh God," and like they'll do that. It's so sick.
It's perfect. It's perfect. And I think the hidden gem on that album though is Scientification, or however you say it. That is, I feel like you know the movie Young Frankenstein?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like the vibe that movie kind of gives out.
Yeah.
When I listen to that song, I feel like I'm transported into like Gene Wilder's body, and I'm in Young Frankenstein, and there's just like that's like where my brain has gone ever since I was young, and I think that song in particular has such like a interesting cinematic quality for a song that has no business being cinematic whatsoever. And an album that really isn't cinematic in any way.
I just, you know, real quick, the track names on these are so good. I've never seen anything that like really captures my interest than these track names. I mean,
when you were
Rail, like Bayonet Work, all of them are so good.
When you were younger, did you like try to make your own track names that were like that, where it's like a mixture of like 2 words together?
I wish I was that smart. Like
I used to sit in industrial technology class making different song names that combined 2 words together all the time. It was so good.
It's definitely clever. I think it's called portmanteau.
Yes, portmanteau.
Yeah, and it's so cool. One thing I wanted to mention, though, was that you said you blew out your speakers listening to Oh God.
Yeah.
Well, I got into a car crash while listening to Oh God.
Nice.
I don't want to know the aftermath of that. That'd be terrible.
Anyway,
Did you used to hate car accidents, but now you hate cell phones?
yeah, right. Oh, yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, and then I remember and the car was totaled, so I couldn't take my Norma Jean CD out of it, and I was just like, this sucks.
Dang.
But anyway, I thought you guys would get a kick out of that.
Yeah, that's a little too on the nose, though. I tell you what.
How about you,
all right,
Mason?
Yeah, for me, I've got it at number 5. So it is, right smack dab in the middle for me. Here's what's interesting, I think, for Oh God, and I think you all are kind of alluding to this, especially for you, JJ, and Cullen. I think Oh God, for me, has the potential to be probably a top 1 or 2 Norma Jean album for me, based on the instrumentation alone. I just think the instrumentation, like if we were just ranking this on instrumentation, Oh God, The Aftermath would be probably my favorite Norma Jean album. My issue, or the reason why it just goes to number 5, though, is the production of it for some reason just doesn't, I don't know, it sounds a little, Cullen uses the term tinny a lot. Like, I don't know, it doesn't quite have that full body sound that we now, especially with the more recent albums for the last 10, 15 years from Norma Jean, we expect. It just doesn't quite have that same sound quality. And so I think for that reason, and certainly like Corey, I think has just gotten so much better as a vocalist with his screams since this album that, yeah, I think those two factors just places it down a little bit lower for me to number 5. But if those two factors, like if that wasn't the case in 2005, like let's say it was, produced really, really well, and let's say Corey had the same sort of vocals that he has now, it probably would be my favorite Norma Jean album, again, because I think the instrumentation is next level. So yeah, that's the reason why it's number 5. So it's right in the middle of the pack for me. But you all are right. Like, best instrumentation of any Norma Jean album by far. I can totally agree with that.
That puts it at a 3.25 on our average calculator.
Nice 3. Okay.
So we'll put it at 3 for now.
I'm just
We'll see where.
an asshole. It's just like bringing all these things down. My bad, guys. My bad.
Well,
dude,
yeah, and all
right.
the bad ones are gonna go right to the top because of you. We can already see it shaking out. I'm just kidding. All right, Redeemer, 2006. Where do we got Redeemer?
Redeemer. I'll go first on this one. This is a great record that impressed the normies, I feel like. Like, this was a record that, like, if you were a fan of, like, Asking Alexandria or Sleeping with Sirens or, I don't know, what's another band from that time period that was just, like, killing it? Can't think of it. But you would maybe went to like Warped Tour and then you're like, oh, Norma Jean, okay, let's go listen to them. And then you heard Redeemer and you're like, holy crap, this is really, really good actually. And it's good in a completely different way than Oh God was, right? Redeemer is the most chantable, singable, most dynamic record on their discography, I would say. And I love it. I absolutely love it. Not as a normie, but as a hardcore fan, right? But it's their most accessible, right? That's the reason that I think it's great, because it showed that Oh God was definitely not for the average listener. It was a little too much, maybe. Redeemer is the pendulum swinging all the way in the other direction, at least in my opinion. But man, the dynamics on this album are so incredible. So many different interesting textures that you hadn't heard from Norma Jean. You didn't really hear in the scene in general. Still maintaining that great dissonance when they needed, but Corey really stepped it up here. Learned obviously some new ways to manipulate and use his voice to create melody where melody was maybe sometimes lacking on Oh God. And there's earworms here everywhere. And I have to say, No Passenger, No Parasite, god damn.
Yep.
Why is that
Yep.
such a good song? It's so simple in comparison to the rest of their stuff, but it builds and builds and builds and builds and finally releases in such a satisfying way. Again, that's if there's one thing that Norma Jean has always done, is their closer song is so expertly crafted all the way across their discography. And No Passenger, No Parasite is easily up there. I do think that there's a couple filler songs on this album, but the ones that aren't are absolutely enormously impressive to me. I have it number 5.
I'm going to piggyback on some stuff you said. I actually have it on number 2 for me. I think it's their best record. It's not my favorite. Oh God is my favorite, but Redeemer I think is their best record. But yeah, to piggyback on what you said, I think it's their most like accessible, and then just the one-liners, everything is chantable in this record, especially if you see them live and you like know their music. Like people are always like climbing on each other and like going nuts to these Redeemer songs, especially like, you know, my favorite song on that record is The End of All Things Will Be Televised. And you know, I'm a Southern boy, but like, you know, tonight the South is on fire, so like everybody's always going nuts, you know. And there was something really special when this record dropped. I could be wrong, but I think this is when they really broke into like the more mainstream,
right?
Like markets and stuff, because like
it definitely did feel like the biggest album to date.
Yeah, like I was like a kid when
sales.
this came out, so you know I do remember seeing like stuff in like Walmart and stuff like that. Like, and we can touch on that later, but I just this record, I saw the 10-year anniversary show, and that is in the top 10 shows I've ever been to. They played at the end with Greyhaven and in Nashville, sorry. And I just remember like the whole room was going nuts for these songs, and just, you know, front to back, it was just so special, because it's like, you know, this is a record that, you know, it's one of the most impactful, like influential records that I've ever listened to. And like from the album art to like the actual songs to like seeing those songs played live, like it's just, everything is so, you know, special. As a listener, as a fan of Norma Jean, like it just resonates through your whole being, you know. But this is their best record in my opinion. It's very fun. I listen to it all the time, and you know, just to rehash, like it's not even my favorite record from them, but I do think it is their best. So
yeah, I'll say the same thing actually, JJ. I think it is probably their best. Actually, what's interesting is I've got 2 albums ahead of them, or ahead of Redeemer. So actually, Redeemer's number 3 for me. But I do think it's the best. Like it, for example, maybe the way I would say or qualify the best is if somebody were to say, I've never heard of Norma Jean, like where should I begin?
Redeemer.
How should I start, like, listening
Yeah.
to Norma Jean? I do think I think Redeemer is like maybe the best representation, at least as a whole album, that kind of gives you the complete sound of all of their records in one. I think Redeemer might be the best at that. So for that reason, I think it's their best, or at least maybe most complete. I don't know if there's a differentiation there for me, but certainly the most complete Norma Jean album. But I think it probably is their best album as well. It's not my favorite. I've got 2 other albums ahead of it, but it's certainly, I think, their best. And so yeah, and yeah, just to, you know, you both have already talked a little bit about just the way that people react to these songs when they play them live, like outside of maybe, well, certainly outside of Memphis, and then probably outside of maybe one other song, maybe like Face Face or something from Bless the Martyr, I don't know if anybody gets as riled up about any Norma Jean song other than Redeemer songs. Like, I mean, obviously lots of songs people start freaking out or whatever, but the way, like when they start doing like End of
Small
All
Spark.
Things or whatever,
Small
and
Spark.
they start doing that, South is on Fire, like people will freak out.
Yeah.
And yeah, they do that well. Or the beginning of Small Spark, like when people know that that's starting to build or whatever, and then that first like crescendo hits, people freak out. Like there's just something about some of the songs on that album that just captured the imagination of their fans more so than probably most of their other albums. So
I have to
I think it's their best.
If I have to jump in there real quick, because I remember a core memory that just popped up for me. I remember Mason and I traveling in the church bus, and we're sharing one headphone each from my iPod Classic, and we turn on Small Spark versus Great Forest, and Mason and I go absolutely ape shit, like a bunch of like a couple kids who've had way too much Mountain Dew and way too many way too much Red 40 or whatever it is, and everyone on the bus is looking at us like, what a bunch of idiots.
We're like legitimately having like our own little mini mosh pit next to each other in the
yeah,
bus.
or seizures, and yeah. And we're like shaking the seats ahead of us, and the kids in front of us are like, would you please stop? I am a distinguished gentleman. And we're like, no, you're not. You're in the pit now, bitch.
I have a similar story real quick. So
Yeah.
Blueprints for Future Homes was featured on
Yes.
like a Vans Warped Tour like compilation or something like that. And specifically, that was the one song I was trying to get one of my like best friends in middle school to listen to. I was like, dude, you have to listen to this band. Like, they're so good. It's a rock and roll band, and it didn't stick with them, but it stuck with me. So at least it worked for somebody.
Joe, let's hear it.
Yeah. So, for me, I actually would say before I forget, this is, okay, I'll say it where it's in my ranking first. It's at number 1. And I'll get into the reasons why for a second. However, it wouldn't be the first album that I showed to somebody. That first album is, I'll point that out when we get to that album, because I feel like there's another album that feels like more of a compilation that's like encompassing of everything that they do, and they really lean into it on each song. But in terms of Redeemer, yeah, I think it just kind of came out at the right time for me, and I think it was a good marriage of like the chaos, but still they really kind of reined it in such a way that was accessible, and that's why there are a bunch of one-liners on that record. I think you also saw Corey beginning to lyrically he began to be a little bit more bold, I think, by really just starting to tackle some pretty hardcore stuff. Like, I think it was the song Cemetery Like a Stage. He mentioned on stage, I think it's about him getting home from school one day and then finding out that his father had been killed by a drunk driver or something like that. And I was just like, whoa, that's, and just a lot of the lyrical content just really stuck out to me, especially being, kind of a younger, angrier dude at the time. Like on Amnesty Please, I've been so bitter toward you, just like over and over again. And I have to say, like, both him and Josh Goggin are really good at like taking one line and then just beating you over the fucking skull.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, like it, or like scream it back, like the more kind of like violent you get too. Like it takes out something very primal in like at least my like being, and especially if the lyric is something that I could really identify with. But I actually think that they started to tap into that mainstream stuff, but I feel like there is a lot of artsy fartsy parts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And like Small Spark, like, yeah, I mean, just who would have ever thought that they would have had like I guess I can't pinpoint what percussion that's being used on the build-up, but there's also acoustic guitar, and you're just kind of like, fuck yeah, they're throwing the kitchen sink at this, and they're heavy as shit, and I mean they're literally putting their like dong and balls on the table. So anyway, so number one for me, I won't say. But it's very hard. Like the top three for me were very difficult. But yeah.
Yeah. Good pick. That puts it at 2.75. So it is now in contention with Oh God, the Aftermath for the third spot. So we'll have to come back and argue that at the end.
Cullen, are you actually writing down like the decibel number too? Because that would be maybe helpful to.
Yep, I am.
Good to know. All right. Perfect. All right, so next album, Anti-Mother, 2009. Who wants to start with that one?
Mason, I think you should start with this one.
Great, I can do that. It's my favorite Norma Jean album of all time. It's number one for me.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's number one. And here's what's interesting, I think. Maybe I'll just add this commentary. It certainly was not my favorite. Like when it came out in 2009, at that point, having listened to Bless the Martyr, Oh God, and Redeemer, it immediately went to number 4 for me. It was just like, I didn't really know what to do with it. It just sounded so much softer at the time, at least the singles that came out for it. It sounded way softer, and I just didn't really get it. And then it was probably so that came out in 2009, so I was probably like a freshman in high school, I think. Freshman in high school, maybe 8th grade, something like that. But it was like later on in high school, and certainly starting in college, when I would like revisit that album, that I was like, oh, this is actually probably the like catchiest hooks of any Norma Jean album. Like the earworm kind of hooks that just constantly are playing in my head. This album just has so many of those for me. And I understand, like, to a degree, why people think of it as sort of like maybe a softer album especially in comparison to the previous 3 albums. But there's just something about the way that they design their riffs on that album that just feels so heavy to me. And I also really love, and not to say that this didn't exist on Oh God or Redeemer, but you start to hear a little bit of the ethereal Norma Jean sound that we really associate with Norma Jean, I think. We start to really hear that more on this album. I'm forgetting is it like Corey's brother that's involved? Is it Matt or
Will
something?
Putney?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Will. So it's, I think, and again, I don't know when, maybe he was involved with the band before then, and I don't even know if he was involved with Anti-Mother, but there is just something about that kind of ethereal just noise that you hear, or again, that we now associate with more modern Norma Jean albums, you start to hear that on this album, and I really, really love that dynamic that they added to it. So anyway,
actually,
it's my favorite album.
I think on this record, what I think that almost ethereal kind of thing is actually the guitar tone. Guitar tone took a big change on this record.
For sure.
And I think that's Page Hamilton influence from Helmet. Helmet is in my opinion, they have the best guitar tone of any heavy band ever. And Page Hamilton was helping write some of this stuff along with Chino Moreno. So I think some of that kind of atmospheric kind of stuff in terms of guitar tone was Page Hamilton influenced, and it is something that tends, at least in my ear, tends to kind of translate to the records following as well. And maybe that's just me, but you also have an extra guitar here, so there is more room for some of that stuff to kind of live. So
yeah. Anyway, I think it's one of those albums where, Cullen, you mentioned before that Redeemer has like maybe 1 or 2 fillers. I just don't think Anti-Mother has any filler, for me at least.
I would agree with that.
I'd say that the Anti-Mother is, for me, it's, like I said, I love the whole discography. I think I definitely need to be in a certain mood for it.
Yeah.
It's it rests at number 8 for me, but it's definitely got some of my favorite songs that they've ever done on the record. and for me, I don't think any Norma Jean record has actually ever had a filler track, in my opinion. So for me, it's like I genuinely enjoy everything. I think it to me, it's also again just seeing like Corey kind of opening up even further with fighters, snakes, and actors, and self-employed chemists. You know, just like on the first track that I mentioned, you know, talking about like, you know, calling out religious people and whatnot, and that's something that I know Mason knows something about. And you know,
I saw that smirk.
And you know, Murphy Was an Optimist, just great fucking song, and you know, it's to me it's great. And then like I think what was the song? And There Will Be a Swarm of Hornets. Yeah, that like just even like I wonder if they like actually went to an actual beehive or something like that and just like took the mic, or if it was just like a sample. But it's so cool, and you know, however, I think for me it's the stuff that really resonated with me, aside from like what we talked about in terms of Redeemer, is still yet to come. But again, another great entry, something that it's definitely an album I come back to.
I have this one as number 6 for me. I think this is their perfect record. And by perfect, I mean there is no filler whatsoever. Every song has something that I have taken something from. I think that it's expertly crafted all the way across. I also, Mason was onto something when he said that this, like when he listened to it in 2009, it felt softer compared to some of the other records and stuff like that. And I felt the same way, but I also didn't care also much that it did feel softer, but I almost kind of put it in like I put it in a different category of music, I guess. And it's kind of a record unto itself in that it is like, it's like an indie metal record. Like think of like indie rock, kind of homespun, very designed for, I don't even know how to say it. It felt like it was much more designed for a broader market, but it did not appeal to a broader market due to its content of the lyrics, especially, of which I really love.
Really quick on
please do. I'm kind of fumbling through that. Go ahead.
Because it's interesting you still categorize it more metal, because this is the album where it feels it actually is diverging a little bit from metal. Like the previous 3 albums feel very distinctly metalcore, very metal type riffs. This is the album where their riffs sound more punk. Like to me, the riffs sound more like Refused riffs than they do sound like Converge or Botch riffs.
Totally.
The riffs just sound way more punk rather than metal in this album, and I think that threw me off initially when I first heard it, and now I've come to really respect it to the point where they've become some of my favorite Norma Jean riffs.
Yeah, I think other than one other record on this list, I think this is Corey's best writing. It is bitter and angry, and in some cases like retributive. It's so pissed off, it feels like, all the way through. And it's funny because it's the album where the music feels like it fits that mood the least. I do feel depressed when I listen to this album. And it makes me, it really does put me in that mood, that mindset. But it's the right kind of depressed. It's like the depressed where like you're still motivated to do things, you know? But maybe not like not like gonna go out like kill people. That's not what I mean by that. But like, because when you say depressed and motivated, that's usually where it goes, I feel like. But I mean like, all right. Like I can still live my day, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense?
I guess I'm never gonna listen to that album with you ever again.
I think
only when we're driving in the car when I'm the one driving.
That was some white dude shit I just heard right there. Wow. Like
I wanted to put the stipulations out there so that I didn't have people pointing fingers.
It's not
at
like
me
Marilyn
when something
Manson
bad
kind of
happens.
depressed, right?
Not that kind of depressed.
Trenchcoat Mafia depressed, you know? But real quick, also I think we should mention this too. Ross Robinson also, this was the first of the 2 records he produced for the band too, which probably also had an impact on a lot of the atmosphere and the tone, especially with his work with Korn and whatnot too.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason why, or Slipknot. But anyway, yeah. Sorry.
I don't want to take anything else out of JJ's mouth, but my last thing is that I think Robots 3 Humans 0 is one of the coolest opening drum riffs, I guess you would call it. Would you call it a drum riff? Drum line? What do you call it, JJ?
See, it's so funny. You were the only person I've heard say the phrase drum riff. Like,
yeah. What else do you call it?
You've talked to me about that.
It's not
I don't
not
know.
really a fill.
Run, whatever. Like I don't know, but
See, I call it a riff because it feels much more musical than just a fill.
Yeah,
and it's
so
starting
fair.
the song.
I love that you've like coined this phrase. So keep saying it. It'll stick eventually.
It'll get its own Wikipedia page at some point.
Right. But I guess as a segue, not to shit on everything that y'all have said, but surprisingly, this is my least favorite Norma Jean record.
All right.
It is at number 9 for me, and it's actually the only Norma Jean record I still do not own a physical copy of. I'll probably change that eventually, especially now that I'm talking about it, but I don't have it on CD, I don't have the vinyl. I don't even know if they press that. But I've
got it.
It never really stuck for me. I listen to it occasionally, but even saying that's being generous. There's a couple tracks on that record that I really like, but it's not one that I sit with, which like I'm just surprised that you guys love it so much. But this is why I love the Norma Jean fandom. Is because everybody has their, opinions on what their favorite is, what the best is, and
Yeah.
You're able to separate the true Norma Jean fans from the fake ones like you.
It just makes it really interesting because, like, I don't know, like someone that's we even kind of talked about it earlier. Is like, if you're gonna show someone Norma Jean, it's probably gonna be Redeemer, maybe even one of the other records, but. I don't know, like everybody's favorite is always different. And I mean there are some bands that have that, but a band of this stature, especially with the discography they have, it's so broad and so unique, everybody's going to have something different that they latch onto. So
I will say, I think this is probably the last Norma Jean album that I would introduce to somebody because I do think it kind of is its own thing. Like it just has its own sound that doesn't feel particularly representative of all of the other albums.
Yeah.
It just really is its own thing. So even though it's my favorite, it also is probably the one that I would introduce to somebody last. If I wanted them
Enneagram
to
4
understand the
right
true
there.
Norma Jean sound.
So something interesting about that is I do generally feel the same way, but I have actually shown people first, not actually a Redeemer song, but I've shown Deathbed Atheist as an introduction because I do feel like that song in particular is a very good representation of Norma Jean. And maybe that's just me. But
Are we moving on to
I was going
Meridian
to
now,
say,
or what?
is this a transition?
oh yeah. Sorry. No, my bad. My bad.
So
I was getting convoluted there.
And
That's on me.
I don't know, but this feeds into what you were saying.
Yeah.
Wasn't the Anti-Mother the last record on their first contract with Solid State before they switched over to Razor and Tie with Meridional?
Oh.
It was also their first one without Daniel.
Gotcha. Okay,
was
that's
about to
right.
say that.
Yeah.
I was about to say that. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so next. Cullen, go.
Well, I already went, but that gives it a 6 on our list. So that one's interesting. That's probably our most bipolar one because we went 1, 8, 6, and 9.
Crazy.
So we're best,
69.
middle, and least. That's kind of all over the board.
All over the place,
Next one is Meridional, which came out when again, Mason? 2012?
2010.
10. Holy buckets. Okay.
I was a freshman in high school. Woo.
Also, I think I said Anti-Mother came out in 2009. I am actually wrong. 2008 is
2008,
when Anti-Mother came out.
Yeah. All right, Meridional. This one was a weird one for me. I'll go first in this one. This record I did not love when it first came out. This was one of those I had to sit with for quite a while before I started appreciating it for what it was. But there was one track right away that absolutely blew me away. And I think it's Norma Jean's best song that they've ever made, hands down, bar none. Falling from the Sky, Day 7. I think that song is their best song. And regardless of what other else is on the record, I think that song in particular raises it up in my books. It could make an argument for wherever it wants to be on the list. But I put it at number 7. I think it's the record that I have sat with the lyrics probably the least, though, I will say. So, that being said, I don't have a whole lot else to say about it, except for this. I kind of despise the album artwork. I know a lot of people like it, but I cannot stand it, and I think it's off-putting.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of their theme, though. I mean, at least for Norma Jean, I've always felt like, Justin mentioned this earlier, that there's kind of some horror themes throughout their discography, I feel, and whether it's Oh God or The Aftermath, talk about unsettling. You look at the booklets and stuff like that, and I think they got nominated for a Grammy for that. But yeah, no, if it's not your taste, it's not your taste.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. It's all yours. You're the guest. You're not the host.
What? Fine. Meridional, it's other than Bless the Martyr, it's the record that I wrestle with the most because, today it might be sitting at a certain spot, but tomorrow it might be way higher or lower. It just really roller coasters up and down their ranking for me. And today I actually put it at 6 on my list, but my bandmate DJ, who is arguably the biggest Norma Jean fan in my band, and we can get to that later, Mason, it's his favorite Norma Jean record. And, he and I have talked about it at length before, but I'm it's always towards the bottom half of my favorite records from them. But every time I listen to it, it's one of those that just jumps right back up. And then, it's not necessarily in my rotation, so it'll fall back down. But then I'll revisit it, and it jumps back up again. And really what speaks volumes to me is that this record is the turning point of their career. And, I'm not a historical, expert or whatever on Norma Jean, but this was their first record with Razor and Tie. Also, Fred says hello, everybody. But, I just, this record I wish I loved more. And honestly, I wish they would still play the hits and stuff more from this record because it deserves more love. And my dog is all over me, so I'm going to pass the torch to somebody. But
I actually like this point. I've never really thought about this, JJ, that Meridional is sort of a transition type of album, and maybe part of that is the fact that this was their first album that wasn't on Solid State, and maybe that's part of it. But just from a sound perspective, it does seem like they start heading in a direction where the sound that we even know of them now, you can really kind of trace back to Meridional. With that said, it's my least favorite Norma Jean album. That's not even a question. I've never even thought twice about it. That's probably been the case probably since it came out. And here's what's kind of a bummer about that, because it was kind of the first Norma Jean album where I was really, really stoked about the release of it. Like, knowing that it was going to be coming out. I still remember going to Walmart the day that it came out with Cullen and buying the album and listening to it for the first time in its entirety. And obviously at that point they maybe had like 1 or 2 singles out. But I just remember listening to it in its entirety for the first time, and just, again, like kind of this excitement around like, oh my gosh, like a new Norma Jean album, and feeling like I was able to participate in that with Cullen for the first time. Because by this point, Cullen and I had become really best friends. And it just feeling like, I remember that on that first listen, it just falling flat for me. And honestly, like I've listened to it many times since, and I just can't like get over that hump for me where it's still been my least favorite Norma Jean album.
I'm
Like,
shocked,
it hasn't
honestly,
changed.
and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was a bonus track called "Kill More Presidents," so I'm shocked that you
I
didn't
know, and
love it.
the only, actually, probably the only redeeming thing about this album was, especially at the time where I really hated Obama, I thought that was an amazing album track. But I just like, you'd think that I would be a big fan of it, but I could not get over. I don't know. There's just something about it to me that just felt like they went in a direction that I just wasn't a fan of, and I don't know. It just never stuck to me in the way that the other albums have.
What's the Angry Brides? What's Anthem of Angry Brides? Is that the name of this song?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a track that got renamed the Anthem of Angry Brides, and I was pissed because I thought "Kill More Presidents" was the perfect song title, and I think that they should have kept it, but they didn't.
No,
And they had their
Kill More
own
Presidents-
like music video for it, I think, too.
Yeah, Kill More Presidents is its own song. It ended up being a B-side. And then
okay.
I think there was like another one that was a B-side called Distance to Planets.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
So
That's
The
it.
iTunes version.
So I guess I can give my ranking and stuff.
Yeah.
So a few things about this. I think that Meridional sits at number 5 for me. I think this album was the first album to me. I agree with what JJ and Mason were saying, where it's like there was a turning point. You could see that they were going somewhere, and that was a little bit different. That being said, I do feel like this kind of felt like it kind of, in some ways, picked up where Redeemer left off, in terms of like combining that heaviness and that chaos, but still a lot of melody. That this strikes me is Meridional strikes me as their first album where it felt like a real event. I don't know how else to put it, but like, before it was just like, oh, we've released albums, and I feel like Meridional was just like, okay, not only are we dropping an album, this is like a fucking event. And I think it has something to do with how extensive the track list is, and also like this has they also started to have like instrumentals in there too, like little parts, and so it felt like a story to me instead of a collection of songs. And then I think they went back a little bit, and then after that I feel like every Norma Jean album has just been a fucking event. And like, to me, whenever I get a new Norma Jean record now, I need to have the fucking vinyl. I need to sit down with a beer or other adult things
Magazines.
and just yes,
Toys?
yes, treats, and I just need to really like listen to it and absorb it, and like it's definitely almost kind of like a spiritual experience for me. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But this definitely feels like that different turning point, and it's also the last with any other. I think this is the last record with Scotty.
Yeah. I was gonna point that out.
Yeah.
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 And Jake, and so where it just starts to go in this direction where it's cinematic, just like and that's where I think it really starts to tug at my own fucking brain as cheesy as it sounds, like Heart and stuff, and that's when I really started to fall in love with Norma Jean. Even though this is not my favorite, it's like in the middle, but I could sense something was happening.
For sure, for sure. 6.75 is where Meridional lands. That is the lowest one, or sorry, the highest score yet. So next is Wrongdoers, which came out, let me guess, 2013, Mason?
That's correct. That's correct.
Good. Okay.
Do you want me to start out with this one? Because I've kind of got a fun little story when it came out. So, yeah, it came out in, 2013. Let's see what the exact date was. Let's see what Wikipedia says. August 6th. So I remember probably a week later, like a week after August 6th, I was going down to college to move into college because I had to go to college early because I had fall camp for football and stuff. So anyway, going to college early, and I remember on the way down to like driving to college with my parents and then with my car, driving all the way down, we stopped in Sioux Falls, and I remember going to Best Buy because I think I ended up buying my laptop. Finally got my laptop. So I remember going to Best Buy, and I remember like getting my laptop, and I was like, while I'm at Best Buy, might as well get the new Norma Jean album because I knew it was coming out, or it had just come out. So I get the new Norma Jean album, get to college, get moved in, start doing all the football stuff or whatever. And I remember like in between practices at some point, remember like having some downtime and listening to it for the first time. And again, it kind of felt a little bit like Meridional, where it just like didn't hit for me the right way. Like it didn't feel like old, like Redeemer or Oh God, that kind of Norma Jean. But unlike Meridional, Wrongdoers has become one of my favorites. Just again, it feels a lot like Antimatter in the way that it just feels like every song has its place. And so for this album, it feels like if there is any filler, it only has one song that might be a filler. But the reason why this album by the way, Cullen, it's number 4 for me. The reason why it probably jumps to number 4 over even Oh God, the Aftermath is the closing track. I always say that it's like something like Sun, Moon. I always forget what it's. Sun dies, Blood Moon.
Yeah.
Yep.
By far, my favorite Norma Jean song of all time.
Wow.
I will blow out speakers every time I listen to that song because that crescendo just is unbelievable. I've never heard anything like it. And I do think from a production standpoint, you really start to see Norma Jean production kind of going next level this album and out. And just to hear that song, like if that song would have come out during like the Oh God years, it just wouldn't have hit the same way because there's just something about the production of that song that just makes that song in particular really stand out. So anyway, I think Wrongdoers is one of their better ones. That's why it's in my top half of Norma Jean albums.
And you know what, Mason? I would have to agree because for me, it sits at number 3.
Right there.
And this is actually the album that I would recommend for first-time listeners because I feel like it's a compilation of everything that they had done to that point. You've got the more experimental, longer songs like Hive Minds or Sun Dies. Then you've got like the classic Norma Jean sounding songs like if you got it at 5, you got it at 50. Water Has No Hands. Lash Whistled Like a Singing Wind. I have the track listing here, so I'm cheating. And then you've got like the more melodic songs, like Wrongdoers itself. Sword in Mouth, Fire Eyes is like a total like perfect for active, like modern active rock radio, And then you've also got their first songs that actually start talking about love in a romantic sense, which I found pretty interesting, and because I feel like it's pretty rare to find like something in metalcore that's especially kind of more of that mathy stuff that actually talks about romantic love. I mean, yeah, you've got your Killswitch Engages and stuff like that, but like for something that's a little bit more extreme and a little bit more heady, I think it's definitely unique, and it's done in the classic, Corey style, like lyrically, and it's great. And I think that song's Funeral Singer, and I think he dedicates that to his wife whenever they sing it live. and I think it's awesome. And that's kind of what I mean by like a compilation where it's just like, hey, you've got like these handful of songs. Like if you want chaotic Norma Jean, you go here. If you want melodic, here. Cinematic, here. And it's all, you can find them all in one album.
I can see that. That's a good point. I still think Redeemer's a better like intro of Norma Jean music, but for somebody who hasn't heard it before. But I do think you're right in the fact, like, you obviously put Wrongdoers as like that's like the best album to introduce somebody to Norma Jean. I would say it's Redeemer, but I would say for me number 2 would probably be Wrongdoers.
And I would say the other way around too for me for
Right,
Redeemer.
right.
That would have been the first one up until Wrongdoers came out.
Fair enough. Cullen and JJ.
JJ, go ahead.
Wrongdoers is actually at 7 for me, and mostly it's just because I don't know, like the hits on that record. Like if you got it at 5, like I love hearing them live. This is the first record that Jeff was on, I believe, and Jeff is playing with him again. So on the last like couple tours that I saw them on, they were playing some songs off of Wrongdoers, so that that was fun for me. But I don't know, like there's just something that didn't resonate with me with this record, and I won't get too much into this because we have other records to talk about. But I don't know, the artwork that came with this, the videos, like the content or whatever that came with this record, I absolutely loved. It was just the songs that really didn't like stick with me. And I'm not going to shit all over the things that y'all just talked about, but this band is amazing. I just because this is at the lower end of my list doesn't mean that it's not good. I still recommend this record to people, but it just wasn't my favorite.
It's okay to be wrong.
Yeah, whatever.
Well,
I do want to point out that I think it's very funny that sitting here and talking about Oh God, and then hearing your specific favorites, Mason, that you love Anti-Mother and Wrongdoers. It's just so funny to see these at the very end of my list while you're talking about them. But I am glad that someone loves them.
Well, one thing before you go, Cullen, that I've always found this interesting about Wrongdoers. Sword in Mouth, Fire Eyes is consistently the top song on Spotify for Norma Jean.
It is on
Apple,
Apple,
I don't know, Cullen,
too.
I know you don't use Spotify, but I don't know if that's the case on Apple Music or like YouTube Music.
That's how it is on YouTube Music too.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. Like I don't remember it being like some big single for them ever. So I've never understood, like it must have got playlisted at some point, but I've never understood the reason for that song being so, like, because I mean, even if they played it live, like I'm sure lots of people would like it live, but like when I think of like like if we were to do a ranking of Norma Jean songs, not just albums, but Norma Jean songs, and if we got like especially a lot of Norma Jean fans, I can assure you that song, it probably is not even coming close to the top 10, if not even, probably not even the top 25. So I just find it interesting that it's consistently ranked as the number 1 song on Spotify for them, and I bet they rarely play it live.
Right.
Very rarely.
I was actually like gonna bring that up. It was really weird when I went back and was quote unquote doing my homework, because like at work today, I was just like gonna put some of the records on, and I'm an Apple Music guy, so when I pulled up their profile, I was like, why is this song like in the top 3? It didn't make any sense to me. But also, quick like little tidbit, so DJ in Idle Threat, he and I a few years ago, we were gonna start like a Doom project, me and him and our other friend Zan, and we were gonna call it Funeral Singer, and we had their old band in Nashville. We were gonna have their old vocalists like play guitar for us and stuff, and we had Ernie like step in and like kind of write with us for a while, and then it was just like, no, we're not gonna do this anymore. But I always wanted to do like a Doom project called Funeral Singer. And
That's a sick band name.
yeah, dude, it's so good.
That is a cool name.
And honestly, like I went back within the last year or so, and like looked, and there's like 50,000 bands that are called Funeral Singer now.
Really?
Shout out to Norma Jean for that one, but I don't think anybody took off with it. So if anybody wants to steal that and try to write a couple songs and start a band, like, good luck.
There you go. Wrongdoers is an interesting one for me. It's the one I have sat with the least. It's the one that I think the songs are all great still, but I don't think that they rise to the same level as literally any other album. And so for me, it is ninth. When I think about Norma Jean, this is the last record I'm going to put on usually. But that being said, I don't hate it. I think, surprisingly, I think one of the things that I don't like about this album though is that when I think about it, all I can think of is curdled milk vomits. Because of the if you got it at 5, you got it at 50 music video. That music video is just burned into my brain to another extent, because not all of those pukes were fake. And yeah. So I think it actually put like a very curdled kind of taste in my mouth. But there are some really, really good songs on this record that I do love. And you guys were talking about Fire Eyes. That song in particular got a lot of radio play. And I don't know if it was pushed by the label or what, but I was out in the Black Hills and they've got a kind of a rock station out there, alternative rock station. They usually play stuff like Shine Down and Volbeat and stuff like that. But that song in particular was getting some radio play out there when that album came out. So that's 9 for me.
Maybe that explains it then. That's it.
I assume that's probably it. I think it just got some decent radio play that ended up transferring over to people's playlists for streaming. So that ends up with a 5.75 score.
Okay.
That is the third highest.
All right, next one. 2016, Polar Similar. Who wants to begin? Where are we ranking this one?
I could begin. This is number 2 for me. I absolutely adore Polar Similar. I think it's a record that has captured my soul. It also caught me at like the perfect time, especially with not being like the most impressed with Wrongdoers. Polar Similar was a pleasant surprise. I feel like it took so many different directions, and it's so much more of a record that wants to be, I don't want to say artsy, but it kind of is. I would agree. I would agree with myself.
Absolutely.
It's a record that feels so much darker and so much more depressed than some of the other records. And I think part of that is, recording at Pachyderm Studios, which is absolutely a haunting place in my opinion. This record really just, it made me feel something that I hadn't felt from Norma Jean before. And I still don't know if I can quite put my finger on it. But part of it, like I was saying, it kind of caught me at the right time. I'm a big David Bowie fan, and I'm a big Soundgarden fan. 2016, I lost both David Bowie and Chris Cornell, like two of like my biggest musical heroes. And I was just like, feeling kind of down in the dumps. And I know it's weird to say like you feel down because some musical celebrity or musical icon dies, but like those two individuals like really did like change the way I thought about music, changed like me as an individual personally. And for some reason, instead of listening to all their music, I was oftentimes going to Polar Similar and just listening to it over and over again and kind of wallowing in my own thoughts with that. So I don't have a whole lot else to say. I think that this is just a really fantastic record all the way through. It's the one I come back to probably more often than any of these other records. And I love it for that. It's a close friend of mine. I'll say that.
So I have a lot to say about Polar Similar, but I'll keep it concise, mostly because, we're running at like what, the 2 hour mark or something now, but also because my dog is attacking me. Um, so I am playing with my dog while I'm talking, but
That's not with yourself?
I didn't. I will neither
He didn't specify what kind of dog.
confirm nor deny that I'm also playing with myself right now. So, and I know that my lady is in the other room listening, so honey, if you heard that, I'm joking. So, so Polar Similar is actually at number 3 for me. And just a quick little story. When they were recording Polar Similar, Corey told me one time that they actually had The Shining playing while they were recording, just like continuously, and that's my favorite movie ever. Which maybe that goes hand in hand with what you were saying, Cullen. Like they kind of had that like cinematic, like haunting, like thing going for them.
Yeah.
But this record's just fun. Like from beginning to end, like just the little tidbits of like y'all are using like the phrase filler tracks, like the sampling and stuff that they do in it. I think the guitar work is great. I believe that it's the first record that Philly played on, who I just love that man in general, but the guy fucking riffs. But Polar Similar was really special. And for me, like, I remember when it first came out, like, upon first listen, I just fell in love with it. And now that I've seen a lot of those songs played live, like, it just, it's a record that, like, I just keep coming back to. I listen to it all the time. Anytime I go to see them and they play one of those songs, it's just like, oh my God, like, a Polar Similar song, But I don't know, like just think of each individual like, instrumentation too is like so special. The guitar riffs are great, the bass parts are great, the drums are awesome. Corey honestly might be at his best on this record. I'm not bold enough to say that like here and now, but this record's so good. And it's sitting at number 3 for me. So I'm curious to see where you guys put it.
So, for Polar Similar, again, I have Wrongdoers at number 4, Oh God, the Aftermath at 5. So Polar Similar I'm going to have at 6, which might make it seem like, oh, it's kind of in that bottom half.
Fuck you, Mason.
Technically it is. But at least I want to give the caveat that those 3 albums almost feel like a toss-up for me. Like even though Polar Similar I'm going to put at number 6 out of those 3 albums, they all are kind of a toss-up a little bit. So to me, it feels like more Polar Similar is kind of in that like right in that middle range for me. But here's what I will say about Polar Similar. Again, I know that I put Wrongdoers at number 4. Wrongdoers was a album that really grew on me, especially over the last like I would say 5 to 7 years, and that's why it's number 4 for me now. But Polar Similar was kind of the first album since probably honestly since Redeemer. So it had probably been a good 10 years where as soon as the album came out, I was really really stoked on and for Norma Jean. And so Polar Similar was that album that came out where, again, like I wasn't super stoked about Wrongdoers when that came out, wasn't stoked about Meridional, wasn't stoked about Anti-Mother when it had first come out. And so this was like the first Norma Jean album that had come out when probably the week or two when it got released, I was like, oh, this is starting to feel a lot like Redeemer type of Norma Jean again. Like it just has that riffage, it has that heaviness that I had been looking for, and so it was Polar Similar that kind of brought me back into Norma Jean. Maybe the other thing I'll just mention about Polar Similar is, so there's been Polar Similar, there's All Hail, which we'll get to, and then obviously Death Rattle. It feels like Polar Similar, especially just from like a production standpoint. These like next 3 albums, starting with Polar Similar, they almost sound to me like there's like a new era of Norma Jean, and they almost all could be like interchangeable. Like they almost sound like we've talked about like Switchfoot before a lot, Cullen, where they'll like record like 100 songs or whatever, and then they just have like this like rotation of songs. It seems like that for me, and I know that's not the case for them, but it does seem like just from a production standpoint, they almost like each one of these last 3 albums sound like they could have all these songs could have been on each other's album, just because they just have the same kind of production quality. So, which I actually like. I don't see that as like a downside, but it just does seem like we're now in a new era of Norma Jean because of that, and it feels like Polar Similar was like the defining mark of like now we're in a new like era of Norma Jean. So anyway, I really like Polar Similar. I know it's going to be on the kind of the bottom half for me at number 6, but it is an album I really want to like sing its praises.
And I would agree with that. It's going to be on the bottom half for me too, but not because it's not amazing. I mean, they have such an extensive discography, so I'm just like, fuck, dude. Like, so but for me, man, it's kind of funny. Like, I have quite a bit to say about it, so I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. But I completely agree with what you were saying, Mason. Like, it's the beginning, I think, of their what I call their Depression trilogy. And this is what I was talking to Corey and Philly about, where to me it feels like 3 different kind of like sects of depression. You know, like to me, Polar Similar is very kind of despondent, removed, and then we can kind of go into the next ones a little bit later. But like this one to me just feels. I mean, even with a song like A Million Watts, like it's you know, he's talking about, you know, like protecting his family, but it's still very cold the way that he's, you know, like talking about, you know, like you're probably going to die. You know what I mean? If you fuck with me, you know, like, and it's just, it's very cold, but I love it. And like the creepiness factor is dialed up on this record. I mean, you've
like
got
those Russian radio transmissions.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's just like, to me that sounds like that track, or there's that other track. What I think it's called. Yeah, the Nebula, where it's like all just, you know, like steel guitar and whatnot. Like those 2 tracks sound like they would have been on True Detective season 1. Like
big time, yeah.
You know, and it's just kind of like swampy, like, and it's just, you know, and let's just talk about how. And that's what I meant by like Meridional kind of like beginning like the event kind of thing. Like this is where I feel like it kind of picks up, and now we really enter the trilogy with Polar Similar, and you know, to me it's funny, even though now I'm kind of like rethinking my ranking because of the fact that I'm like, fuck, dude, because it does mean a lot to me. And let's just also say like the first tracks on this record and the next 2 are just like fucking monumental as fuck.
Yeah.
Like again, this is just, these next 3 records are like they're putting their fucking balls and their fucking whole cock on the table and they're just saying like, dude, like this is
Lightworker a Christian band anymore?
Oh yeah. I mean, well, especially now. You know, like I watched The Righteous Gemstones and I got very inspired, and I was like, I could do that.
Dude, I'm watching through that right now. Should we start a band together?
Let's go, dude.
I love Righteous Gemstones.
Such a great band.
I feel like Righteous Gemstones, what the writers did was they just listened to Marriage of Heaven and Hell by Plea, and they're like, all right, this is a TV show.
Yeah, no, absolutely, dude. It's just, or they just like read up on the history of Benny Hinn.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, yeah. So Polar Similar, I think is a masterpiece. And
where do you rank it at, Joe?
Oh, sorry, I thought I mentioned that.
Maybe you did. I missed it.
I apologize. 7. So at the bottom half, but again, like I do love it, and the first in the Depression trilogy.
Hell yeah!
So where is Polar Similar, Cullen?
That puts it at 4.5, which is slightly better ranked than Bless the Martyr.
Wow. Who could have saw that coming? All right. Well, good to know. All right. Well, let's move on to All Hail 2019. At the end of 2019, where do we have All Hail? Who wants to go first?
4.
Joe, take it away.
It's a 4 for
Okay.
me. I'm cutting y'all
Okay,
off.
4 for you.
No, I'm
Go
just
ahead.
kidding.
Go
It's
for
just
it. Go
because
for
you
it.
just talked.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll be quick, I promise. But yeah, it's a 4 for me. I think it's sitting at 4, honestly, because, like, you know, not jerking myself off here, but, like, you know, we did tour with them, like, right after this record came out, and then when Death Rattle came out. But if I'm not mistaken, this is the first record that Matt drummed on, and then
That's correct. Yep.
like I don't know, like for me this was a very guitar heavy record, but also like lyrically this was a really heavy record to like sit through. And I don't know, it's just a very special era of this band. So I saw them live, I think like 4 or 5 times when they were touring this record. And then I don't know, it's just like all the visuals and stuff that went with it as well, like really stick with me. It's kind of where I feel like this band matured into something to where they were like, hey, we're a legacy band. Any Norma Jean fan from the beginning or a new Norma Jean fan finds something in this record to really latch onto. But yeah, like that should, like, you know, put a nice little circumference around like what I feel with this record. But all in all, like there's a lot of really special songs front to back on this one. I would highly recommend it to somebody to check out. But this is maybe an unpopular opinion, but my favorite song from them on that record is actually Anna. So, and that's the one that has Garrett Russell on it. So, big fan of that. So it's kind of the crossroads moment of like you have a legacy band and a band that's really like just shooting to the top of like the whole, you know, underground Christcore whatever scene. So that was just one of those moments for me where I was like, yeah, this band still has it. You know, they're reconnecting the old with the new. So yeah. So passing the torch on that one. That one's sitting at 4 for me.
Oh yeah, Joe.
Oh, for me, that's sitting at number 2.
Wow.
I really love the record, and yeah, the second entry in the Depression trilogy, and that was the only reason why I was going to go, just because I was like, you know, just
Sorry.
move forward with the, no, you're good, but you know, to me, I think this one is a little bit more of an external kind of depression, like of like a reaction to. It to me it's definitely, yeah, it's kind of funny, even though reactions on Polar Similar, this one's kind of more of a reaction to the things that are around you. And even Corey said this, you know, like the name of the album was inspired by the fans, you know, All Hail. And yeah, it's got, I mean, dude, it's got just like some of the most chaotic shit that I've ever heard them do. And just like, it's a little bit more metal in some places too, you know, like really quick riffs, and I'm a total fucking metalhead. So like, you know, and I think, you know, Grayson obviously helped out with that. You know, I know he's a huge Pantera fan. So, yeah, so like all in all, just, you know, again, it's just all encompassing, and again, smash, like just a smashing opening and like epic closing, a fantastic installment in that Depression trilogy.
Yeah, I love that you call it a Depression trilogy, and I think it fits right in. I have it at 8, but I feel like that's a very soft 8. I did not want to put it 8. And the only reason I put it 8, the record snuck up on me. I was still, even 3 years later, digesting Polar Similar. And I felt like it was too much Norma Jean for me too soon, which is very strange, but I think it's just because Polar Similar had that much of an effect on me personally. All Hail, I was really off-put by the album name. And I know that, you know, they've always said All Hail the Mighty Norma Jean, but like it's really kind of been off-putting to me, like just the album name. but the songs, holy shit, are they good?
This record, dude, like they
Yeah.
earned that. Like
they did. They absolutely did, JJ.
But like they earned it, dude. Like just
You nailed that. You nailed that. I've just always been like kind of like firmly against like self-reverential kind of
I agree.
kind of stuff. But I think that they were actually trying to like turn that back at the fans, be like, hey, all hail the fans. Like you guys have like stuck with us and like, you know, been through this whole thing with us. But those songs on this record are the most I don't want to say anthemic because they're not necessarily anthemic, but man, they just hit the heaviest. Mm-hmm. Like it makes you feel a lot of times like you want to run through walls. Yeah, I don't have much else to say. I really do love this album, and I think this is actually a really good spot. Like if there's someone who's like does listen to heavy music, this is a good album to turn people on to be like, hey, this is kind of like what Norma Jean is if you want some of that really, really heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you all. Again, like kind of along the lines of what I mentioned before of like you've got these there's kind of this grouping of albums that almost kind of feel like a toss-up for each one of them. But what I will say, so I have All Hail at number 7. So again, it's sort of in that bottom third. And I'll say this again for Death Rattle. All Hail is just the album. It came out 5-6 years ago, and I just like haven't been able to listen to it long enough to really fully appreciate it. I think now you all are talking about like JJ, you mentioned Anna. The opening track is unbelievable. I listen to the opening track all the time. Landslide Defeater, I think, is like one of the coolest Norma Jean tracks.
Absolutely.
Especially with that like knife on the guitar neck. That's so sick. I mean, there are just a number of songs on this album that are just amazing songs. And so I want to have it higher than 7. I just haven't been able to like fully appreciate it, I think. In the way that it deserves to be appreciated for it to be higher. But that also means like if I'm going to rank it higher, then there's going to be other albums I really like that are going to be ranked lower. But yeah, I have it number 7. But again, it's one of those things where I still love it. Like I still like whenever they play any of these songs live, I'm going to freak out. But yeah, I just like for whatever reason, it's going to be at number 7 for me. So yeah.
That puts it at a 5.25. These rankings are actually working out really, really nicely. We're going to be able to sort them out pretty easily, I think.
Good. Good.
Last one, Death Rattle. Sing for Me.
2002. 2022. 2022. 2022, which is, album's almost 3 years old now, which is hard to believe.
That is hard to believe.
So, yeah, where do we have this one, guys?
I don't want to cut line again, but I'm gonna. So, right when they released this record is when Idle Threat was going out on like a little tour with them. And my favorite show that I have ever played, we were in Colorado Springs, and you guys were there.
We were there with you. Yeah.
And so if I'm not mistaken, it was either the day before, the day after they released Death Rattle was the show that we played with them. And that record, like, I don't know, like it's to preface really quickly, I don't think there is a bad Norma Jean record, but it is sitting at 8 for me, but I fucking love it. Like I listen to it all the time still, maybe that's recency bias or anything like that, but like I love it. And I've seen these songs played live like a bunch. So I don't know, there's just like a special, I don't want to regurgitate like things I've already said, but like there's something special going on with like the era of this band right now, to where when they're touring on this record, when I listen to it now, even, a year or two past, it's like I'm picking up different little things that I love, especially in songs like Spearmint Revolt or like, the opening track, or even getting into like the lineup they have now, which I will go ahead and pitch that I think the current iteration of Norma Jean is my favorite I've ever seen.
Wow, that's saying a lot.
Corey on vocals, and then Clay playing bass, and then Grayson, Philly, and Jeff on guitar. I love, like, they're...
Oh, leave Matt out. Okay.
Oof. I mean,
Jesus.
he's playing drums. He's playing drums.
Come on. You're a drummer who doesn't think about the drummer first? What the fuck are you?
No, he is my...
He's a dog. He is a dog. I love that
Did
guy.
I not say that? Like, anyway, whatever.
No, you didn't. You missed it.
This is my favorite iteration of Norma Jean, by far. But, I don't know, like, I this record, like, it might be towards the bottom half, like, second to last for me, but it's still very special. So, yeah, like, where do you guys have it?
I like how you're trying to braid your hair into Grayson braids right now.
Oh my God! Now I have so many stories. We'll skip that for another time.
So JJ, you have a number 8. You said.
Yes.
So I do as well. And again, I think it's similar to All Hail for me, where I just haven't been able to kind of sit on this album long enough to really appreciate it in its entirety. With that said, though, I do think Spearmint Revolt could, for me, go down as like a top 5 Norma Jean song of all time for me.
Pause. Does anyone else, whenever you hear Spearmint Revolt, you want to say Spearmint Rhino?
No, that's never...
Oh.
I've always thought it was like a...
Spearmint Rhino is a famous strip club.
I always thought like Spearmint Revolt was like a... Like,
all right, tell me more. With visuals.
I'll tell you with visuals through the spoken word.
All right, I'm gonna Google it real quick.
Yeah, you do that.
I will say Spearmint Revolt sounds like what like Five or Stride Gum would call their spearmint.
Oh my God,
version
that's
of
a titty.
gum.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Now you are actually playing with yourself. I can tell.
Anyway, I think that
Callback.
song is an absolute killer of a song. Again, just so well written. Could go down as like a top 5 Norma Jean song of all time for me. It's just absolutely unbelievable. But yeah, I just haven't been able to sit on this album long enough to really fully appreciate it. So that's why I have it at number 8.
I have it at number 4. I am in love with the songwriting, especially on this record. I think through and through, this record is very, very strong. I feel like there's absolutely no filler, all killer on this. I think part of the reason I like it the most, or I like it more than some of the other records as well, is because I've seen Norma Jean more touring on this record than any other. Okay, get this. I hadn't seen Norma Jean until
Was that
Polar Similar came out.
Yeah, I was about to say.
It was in
wow.
between Polar Similar and All Hail. I just never had the opportunity, and I feel like they spread their wings a little wider, a little farther, and I had a lot more opportunities to see them more recently. And I feel like I learned these songs like. They get stuck in my head a lot more than a lot of the other songs on the record, and even like the verses and stuff like that. A lot of times, you remember the choruses or like the big like chant vocals and stuff like that. But like, Death Rattle, like every single lyric, I think I can recite the whole album. I'm not going to do that for you right now, but I think I can.
Do that to me in private, actually.
I'll do it to you in private. To your privates, and I don't know. I think this record, it does sum up the Depression trilogy, kind of like you're talking about, and I feel like it's the part of the Depression where you're like looking back almost at the old days and being like, think about like how much better life was when we were younger, and when there was less responsibilities and there was less.
1994.
1994, yeah.
That's really what it is. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. And I mean, you got a John Lennon kind of reference in here and stuff like that as well. You've got some really, really classy and also witty kind of references all throughout the album that I feel like are very culminating. I almost felt when I was listening to it like it was kind of like a farewell kind of record, and I was getting worried that this might be the last one, but I know it is not. And that makes me at least a little bit happy. So
for me, it's at number 4 too. I adore this record. I think it's something that, like I said, with the Depression trilogy, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think it's a self-reflective depression. It's, and it's kind of coming to terms with how things might not be the way that you want them to be, and also that, hey, kind of like what Heartache says. And I just love that for a title of a Norma Jean song.
yeah.
And it's just like, and it has nothing the fuck to do with romance, and it has everything to do with like a self-examination of the human condition, and also just feeling completely, in a way, I feel like kind of abandoned, by your peers or the people that you want to associate with, whatever it is that you might, I guess kind of correlate with that. But yeah, I mean, we've even got I think the first genuine guitar solo in Waves that they've ever done.
Yeah.
Also, this record means a lot to me, and it's in and it's their newest one, and I feel like whatever they do next, I think they're kind of I'm curious to see where they go next, because I don't know if they're going to keep exploring kind of that, kind of depression kind of thing. But like I said, when Philly and Corey heard my theory about that, they're like, that kind of makes sense, and it's going to be interesting. And I kind of, it's to me, it's a beautiful record. I think it's a piece of art, honestly. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I real quick, going off of what you said, hot take, without knowing literally anything, I think their next record is going to be their best record.
I think to be honest with you, low key, I believe that too.
It just feels like it.
Something's brewing, and they've got just the lineup they've got. Jeff is he's back in a sense, and it's just like you've got some of their I don't know, dude, and that's what I mean by an event. Like each of, especially the last 3 albums, just kind of like, I mean, look how we're fanboying over this shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? It feels like I'm not really a Marvel, cinematic universe guy, but it feels like we're talking about something like that, or like Alien, or like any of that stuff. And that's what I love about this band. They've built their own lore, and that's why it was a real treat when Corey gives us more than like a short summary about each song, when he actually peels back the curtain like he did about Cemetery Like a Stage. Like you really, I mean, those are little nuggets, like real moments where you're just kind of like, wow, that's where he's coming from. And because his lyrics are kind of not as Chino Moreno and like cryptic, but they're definitely cryptic to a certain extent. And totally. You're just kind of like, whoa, what is this guy talking about? An absolute master at his craft.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
All right. Are we ready for the definitive Black Sheep Norma Jean album ranking?
Yes, we have one tiebreaker to make.
Oh.
Okay.
So number nine is for sure Meridional.
So that's the lowest ranked one.
That is the lowest ranked one.
Wow.
We have a tie between Anti-Mother and Death Rattle Sing For Me. Now, Mason, Anti-Mother was your number 1.
Yep.
No one had Death Rattle at number 1. Not even close, to be honest. So for Death Rattle, it was 4, 8, 8, and 4. For Anti-Mother, it was 1, 8, 6, and 9. Now, to me, I would say, due to that ranking, we've got no definitive answer as to what which one is number 8. So, Mason, since Anti-Mother is your number 1, let's see if we can make a good argument as to why you think that should be ranked higher or better than Death Rattle.
Well, and I think this all comes down to preference, but I would say, because I would imagine the rest of the albums are going to be in most agreements of kind of where we think they should be. Why I think at least Anti-Mother should at least not be, or it should be, is it number 7 then? It would be number 7, right?
You're arguing for number 7 instead of number 8. Yeah.
Right. The reason for that then is, again, Anti-Mother is the most unique sounding Norma Jean album. Even if it's not our favorite, I think we all can kind of agree it just is its own sound. And I think for that reason alone, just for the sort of risk that takes, I think we should at least give it a little bit of an edge, especially if it's tied with another album. So that would be my argument for why it should be at least a number 7 in the ranking rather than number 8.
Okay. Mason, I'm going to argue on your side. I had it at number 6, which was the next best ranking for Anti-Mother. And I'm going to say that I think that this is where Norma Jean found their guitar tone. The guitar tone that they have almost essentially stuck with. Now, they haven't stuck with the 3 guitars all the way through, per se. But I think that the song structures for Anti-Mother are slightly more robust than maybe Death Rattle is, and that's only by a hair. I think Death Rattle has incredible song structure and everything like that, and lyrically, Death Rattle I would argue is on par with Anti-Mother. What about Joe and JJ? Do you guys have an argument as to why you think Death Rattle should be 7 instead of 8?
Better production. I think like I said, it's a masterclass at what Corey does. And it even this far into their career, they're still finding ways to make firsts happen. And on top of that, with Anti-Mother also being kind of like that ethereal kind of sound, or that's when they started to add, I think, a little bit more of that into it. I mean, you get a ton of that in Death Rattle.
That's true.
But the argument for Anti-Mother is that, I mean, it's legacy,
Mm-hmm.
And you also have like some awesome guests on there. I mean, you've got, Ko from Seos, and you've got Chino Moreno, you've got Paige Hamilton, and I know that that's an album that they personally love a lot too. So I'm down to just for, to remove my recency bias, is to knock it down to number 8, but know that it's painful.
Sure.
Noted.
It's so funny because I'm looking at this just strictly from my own bias, and these are my number 8 and 9 records.
Right.
So I do think Death Rattle is a better record, and that is recency bias. But I also own all of the Norma Jean records except for the Anti-Mother. So maybe I'm the one that needs to go back and fall in love with this record or whatever. But I don't know. I think maybe being, we're sitting here in 2025. I think Death Rattle is just a better record across the board. I don't know. If this is a hill I'm going to die on, then I don't know if I'm willing to do that. So, yeah.
All right, sick. Well, I think it makes sense that Death Rattle stays at 8 then, because there's two of them. There's two of us that ranked it at number 8, so it feels more justified. Okay, so
Yeah, fuck you.
9 is Meridional, 8 is Death Rattle Sing For Me, 7 is Anti-Mother, 6 is Wrongdoers, 5 is Bless the Martyr, Kiss a Child. That's the biggest one that like really surprises me.
Yeah,
to be honest.
that's
That
wild.
does. That totally does.
That's
4
actually exactly where I have it too.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
It's just your list or what?
Go ahead.
Number 4 is All Hail. 3 is Polar Similar. 2 is Oh God, and number 1 is Redeemer.
I was so close. It was almost my exact list. That's crazy.
That's pretty wild. That's pretty wild.
It,
So next
it is
time we'll
kinda
just call
interesting.
you.
Like, I'll just say, like, from a chronology standpoint, it is a total mix, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
Bless the
100%.
Martyr is right in the middle. We've got their newest album, Death Rattle, at the end. We have their more middle albums, or I guess maybe more recent albums as well, at the very top. Like, it's just it's kind of intermersed. Like, but also you've got Polar Similar at what, number 3 you said, and so it's kind of all over the place in terms of just like, you know, the chronology. It's not like their best album was their first one and has gotten worse since, or vice versa. Like, it's just all over the place, which I think is kind of interesting.
And I think this is such a good cross section of Norma Jean listeners too, because you're not going to get a singular group of people that are going to say, "Well, obviously, this is their best album," right? Like if you were talking about Under Oath, more than likely you're going to get people that say, number 1 is obviously Define the Great Line. Number 2 is obviously Chasing Safety. And then it's kind of a crapshoot from there. But like, there's no obvious number 1 here. Even with Redeemer, we weren't even close to an obvious number 1. Like, we were percentage points away from Oh God, which was very, very small percentage points away from Polar Similar. It is, like you said, all over the board throughout the years, throughout the decades at this point, which I think is an anomaly. That has to be an anomaly. There's so few bands that you could throw all their records out there, put it on a list, and have everyone rank it who's a listener and say, all right, pick your best, and it be a smattering of their favorites all throughout the years. It is really an anomaly, in my opinion.
They are such an interesting band in that way, and again, I think it's a testament of just how unbelievable of musicians they are. I mean, I think we can all obviously agree on that. Also, Joe's got to jump off, but thanks for coming on, Joe. We'll finish this up, but it's good to see your face.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Love you guys. Sorry, my nephew's here, and I actually happen to be in his room, and he's 2 years old, and it's way past his bedtime, so I gotta go.
Well, sorry, man. Hey, have a good one.
Love you, dude.
Well, JJ, Joe, thanks so much for ranking Norma Jean albums. Again, just a band that I think obviously has been instrumental in all of our lives, whether, you know, for Joe especially, it sounds like, you know, lyrically he's been really, you know, influenced by Corey, and you know, I would imagine for you, JJ, you know, just from the drums, whether it's Daniel Davidson or all their other drummers, especially, you know, like knowing that you've gotten really close with Matt, like you've really been shaped by their drummers, and then for Cullen and I, it's just, you know, this is a band that I think, like Cullen and I, like they have been one of our favorite, like just as a friend group, like between Cullen and I, like they've been a core band, like them and the Chariot, right? Like just this core band that every time Cullen and I hang out, either Norma Jean or the Chariot's going to be played, and they've just been such a core band in our friendship. So what a like core band for all of our lives, and so it's always fun to just reminisce and you know, duke it out a little bit too, to try to figure out what are the best albums in the Norma Jean discography. So thanks so much for hanging out.
Yeah, of course. Always love you know, chatting with you guys. Y'all are All right.
Just die.
Before we go, though, I'm going to plug Joe's band, though. So make sure, whoever's listening, make sure you listen to Lightworker's latest album, How the Beautiful Decay. It's great. If you're into metalcore, please check it out. He and I are big fans of each other's bands, and, I just want to make sure that he gets his roses, too. So check out Lightworker. Make sure you follow them.
Lightworker's they're also going on a great tour with Meadows and who else, Mason? Do you remember who else is on that tour?
Meadows, Confessions of a Traitor, and some other bands that.
Yeah, that's going to be a killer tour. We're gonna have to go to that, Mason, for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Maybe JJ can join in on it somewhere as well.
Y'all fly me out. I'll hang out.
We can do that. We'll do it. So, all right, JJ, we'll see you whenever we see you. But it's always fun to hang out.
Love you guys. Y'all,
thanks for hanging.
Hang out. Love on your people. Goodbye.